Hey guys, Angus from Spotted Hog Airsoft here today with another airsoft gun overview video for you guys today. Now today we're going to be taking a look at the CYMA SVD Dragunov Airsoft AEG. If you're interested in purchasing this gun after you watch this video, there'll be a link down below in the description to SpottedHogAirsoft.com where you can pick it up for about $210. Now with that being said, this is a pretty cool gun, certainly a long one. Let's get into the video review. As always, let's start off the review by going over the gun's packaging. As you can see, the box is pretty boring. But on the inside, the gun and all its accessories are packaged quite well in some thick black styrofoam. Inside the box, you'll have two pieces of paperwork, including a pink warning sheet as well as a very simple manual, a bag of low-quality BBs, a front sight post adjustment tool, a small type trickle charger, an 8.4 volt 1200 milliamp small type stick battery, a very long dejamming rod, and of course your CYMA SVD AEG as well as its high capacity magazine. Now out of the box, this is a pretty cool gun, not only obviously in looks but also in comfort and feel. Talking about that particular section, it's a very comfortable gun. It weighs in maybe 10 pounds and it measures about 4 feet in length. So it's a little longer, but the weight is very evenly distributed. You don't feel heavy in any portions of the gun, and overall it's a very comfortable weapon, at least personally in my opinion. As far as external construction goes, this is truthfully, besides a couple plastic pieces, a full metal gun. Full metal pieces on this gun do include your top cover, all your extremities, trigger guard, your fire selector switch, your outer barrel, your iron sights, your magazine, etc. The only real plastic pieces on here would be your buttstock. This is composed of a rather solid quality plastic with a rubber, kind of not really textured, but a nice soft feel to it that's rather comfortable in the hands of the shooter. Obviously this brown portion of the cheek rest isn't metal, that'd be pretty uncomfortable. It's constructed of a harder rubber that feels pretty nice when pressed up against the cheek. Also, the handguard is constructed of plastic, same deal as the stock. It's pretty comfortable when you hold it, has that rubber finish. And finally, the last piece on this gun that wouldn't be metal would be that bright orange tip at the end of the barrel. Now, otherwise, like I said, you get a full metal construction. As far as internals go, you do have a metal gearbox, and in my opinion, CYMA makes a great budget gearbox. You get what you pay for with these guns, and if it doesn't satisfy you out of the box, you could always upgrade it after a while. A couple things I'd recommend with the internals though, maybe give it a new shimming, new greasing, just to make it sound and run a little bit more smoothly. Overall, the externals in the gun feel very solid. It's a comfortable gun, and the internals, great for what you pay for. Now let's hop directly into some features of the SVD here, and in my opinion on an AEG, there's no bigger feature than battery space. Where the battery's stored in this SVD? Well, it's inside the weapon's hollow handguard. And in order to access this battery compartment, it's a little bit of a hassle. Certainly nothing you could do in the airsoft field, so let's do it by step. First things first, flip this small notch piece at the front of the handguard downward like so. Now, here comes the fun part. In order to open up the handguard, you have to remove this metal retaining or holding piece up here in the front that you just released by sliding this piece down. Easy, right? Well, not exactly, because it's really held on there tight, which is odd because when you put it back on, it doesn't seem all that tight. In order to do this, you really should force it off, and I would definitely recommend you have a flathead screwdriver to kind of use as a wedge. Just squeeze it in there on this side of the notch and push forward like so. This is a little bit of a chore, so that's probably why you couldn't do this in the field. But once you do get it off, it feels oh so good. You'll notice that the handguard immediately splits into two halves. Now remove the half, you'll obviously reveal your small type connector, and it's inside this handguard that your stick type battery is going to be stored. Battery space is a little cramped, so you really are limited to the stick type batteries, and overall it's really what you're going to have to take here. I imagine a small slender LiPo might fit inside here as well if you wanted to change things up. Overall, the battery installation itself is very simple. Just hook up the connectors, and at that point you'd reverse the process. Simply make sure the pieces of the handguard are lined up. Then you'd slide back this metal piece and simply flip up the notch. It's pretty easy to do as far as getting it back together, just a little hard getting it apart. So you could probably put the battery in the field, but as far as getting everything open, it's going to be a little bit of a chore. Now obviously once your battery's been installed, you can fire the SVD. Your fire selector switch is located on the right side of the gun and is similar to your standard AK fire selector switch. As you can see, it's currently pressed all the way to the top, touching the top cover. In that position, the gun's on safe. Obviously it can't fire. If you were to flip it downward one notch, the gun will be on its only fire mode, semi-auto. It doesn't fire full auto, semi-only, kind of went along with the whole sniper DMR kind of feel. Overall, the selector switch is actually kind of loose in my opinion. It slides pretty easy. Like, it's not going to be jiggling around, but a slight tap will send it down to semi or up to safe. So just be careful when you're moving it around. Otherwise though, gets the job done. As far as the latch behind the fire selector switch goes, when flipped downward like so, it simply allows you to remove the top cover. The SVD's magazine release is located just behind the actual magazine itself. Similar to an AK, it's what I call a paddle release. Simply push it forward, and the magazine will pop out like so. Now, as far as the included magazine goes, the magazine your gun will come with is a high-capacity SVD style airsoft magazine that holds about 200 rounds. For those of you wondering, no, this gun can't take AK-47 style airsoft magazines. It's limited to the SVD style only. As far as how the magazine works just like a standard high cap. You fill it up through the trapdoor at the top, wind the gear down below, and then the BBs will obviously feed through the top as well. Works like a standard high cap, really no feeding issues to speak of, especially since the gun only fires semi-automatic. It's not like you have to wind so fast in order to keep up with a fast rate of fire. Overall, it's a nice quality mag, almost entirely constructed of metal too. When you go to put the magazine back into the gun, make sure you lead with the front lip of the mag first. Place it inward, like so, and press upward until you hear a sound click. I noticed that if you don't get the magazine in just right, it doesn't want to go in like now. So make sure you line it up perfectly until you hear that sound clack. When the magazine is in, there's a little bit of wobble, but nothing really too bad. One quick feature I wanted to take a look at would be this gun's removable cheek rest. As you can see, when you get the gun, it'll obviously be on there. Like I said earlier, it's a pretty comfortable little cheek rest constructed of a nice textured rubber that feels pretty comfortable when it's on your cheek. The advantage of having this on is obviously the added comfort as opposed to laying your cheek on the cold stock, and also to allow you to get your cheek a little bit higher, maybe get your eye level adjusted to a sight that's raised up a little bit. However, you can remove the cheek rest. If you wanted to, you can pop it off very easily to give yourself a stock that looks somewhat bare like this. As far as iron sights go, obviously the SVD is equipped with them. You're taking a look at the rear sight right now. It definitely looks similar and is in the same style as the rear sight you might find on a lot of your airsoft AKs. As far as it goes, it's what I call the pyramid sight in the back. You have two bricks with a slit in the middle designed to line up with the front sight post. It is adjustable simply by squeezing the sides. You can slide that piece forward and tilt it up a little bit to adjust it for the proper range you'll be shooting at. Overall, it's a pretty accurate sight when lined up with the front one. The rear sight is also very nicely detailed if you couldn't see it in that past clip. You'll notice that the different numbers for signifying the different ranges you'd be shooting at are painted on very nicely in bright red paint. They are also engraved in there, so they should be there to stay even after the paint fades off. Looks really nice. Anyway, your front sight is also a pretty standard looking sight. It's what I call the target sight, surrounded by a metal circle with a sight post in the middle, obviously designed to be lined up with your rear sight when you're aiming. Now obviously the sight post in the middle is adjustable, as you saw with that tool earlier, so you can go ahead and raise it or lower it depending on how you're aiming. Overall, the iron sights are pretty accurate for the gun, and they get the job done. Speaking of sights, you're not exactly limited in your optic options with this gun. Yeah, the SVD might look proper with that fancy standard scope you see on a lot of them. However, this gun actually does have the standard kind of AK mounting rail located on the side. What this is for is if you wanted to buy an AK style scope mount, you could go ahead and do that and it'll attach right up to this SVD. That way you can just have a standard 20mm rail on top and really put whatever optic you want on here. I guess it does look cooler with the old Russian scope. However, in practical cases, you can use what you want, and that's a big advantage to me. Now, the SVD's bolt, when racked back, does have a purpose. When you rack it back, you reveal your gun's hop-up unit. Now, the hop-up unit here is modeled off the Rio sword. It's actually pretty nice. It's not that tiny little gear you normally find in your AEGs. It's actually a rather large gear base in there that's very easy to access and turn. When you turn it, obviously, you can adjust your hop-up, and the hop-up's pretty effective, as you'll see in a few moments here. This is pretty convenient because even in the winter, say you're out there, you have big gloves on, you can easily fit that finger in there to turn it around. When you release the bolt, it has a pretty nice clack. Now with that last little bit about the gun's hop-up, let's put it to the test. Let's check out this gun's performance. As far as the chronograph results go, overall they were very consistent. Using 0.2 gram BBs in the stock battery, we saw right in the 440 to 450 FPS region, with the exception of one fluke where it dropped down to 300 FPS, probably just a hit on the side of the chrono. Overall, that FPS is great for outdoor play, especially if you do want to run this as some form of AEG sniper. Now let's go ahead. For the shooting test, I positioned myself about 135 feet away from a target about the size of a crouching player in a game. I took aim with 0.28 gram BBs, the stock battery, and an adjusted hop-up in order to hit this target. Overall, in the middle of the test, I really found my rhythm and the results showed it there. The BBs came into direct contact with the target a number of times, and when they didn't, they all stayed directly in that general grouping, hitting the chair or just narrowly missing it. Overall, the accuracy was pretty darn good, but as far as hop-up goes, I did have a couple misfeeds at a couple points. 2 BBs rolled out of the barrel, screwing up the entire shot. So just take that into account. That was only twice, however, could happen a couple more times. Overall, the gun was pretty accurate, and I'm pretty darn happy with it. Alright, and with the conclusion of that performance test there, we can go ahead and wrap up this review. Overall, the CYMA SVD Dragunov Airsoft AEG personally pleased me quite a bit. I thought it was a pretty cool gun with a nice performance behind it. That being said, there were a couple things I didn't like. What we just saw, even though it only happened twice out of the whole time I've been testing out this replica, 2 BBs did come out of the barrel. If you're in an airsoft game, that screws up your shot. Now the enemy team knows where you are. So just something to point out with the hop up there. Also, the magazine. Yeah, the magazine is a high cap, so it might rattle. Personally, not that big of a deal to me. Then again, I'm not playing the sniper role, but I don't like how you have to perfectly line it up. I understand it's important, but if you're in a game, you're under fire, you're not always thinking about that, and then you never know, mag might not be lined up perfectly, and you can't fire your shots. Changing the battery, another thing I don't like. It's not that it's bad, it's just I like to be able to change my battery in the field, and with this gun, I certainly couldn't do it. However, that being said, if you're probably using this as what it's intended for, as a kind of off the beaten path, sniper kind of role in a game, you might be able to do it. You never know. Overall, the gun's constructed very, very nicely. It's got a great comfort to it, and it has an awesome design. The cheek rest is very comfortable as well, and I just generally like the clack that that bolt gives off when you let go of it. Overall, if you're an airsoft player looking for something to play that AEG, DMR, sniper kind of role, you don't want a bolt action, you want something semi-auto, this SVD might be a good choice. So if you're interested in picking it up, check out SpottedHogAirsoft.com. And thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe.